I was not expecting it to be Steve. Your name. It's Steve. I need you to listen to me, please. His voice was strained. I could barely recognize him. The man who used to be so smug, so self-assured, now sounded like a shell of himself. I don't know what's going on, he continued, his voice shaky. I've tried everything. The clients are furious. We're losing contracts left and right. You were the one who kept everything together, and now I'm losing it. I'm begging you. Please come back. I could feel the tension in his words, but this time, I wasn't feeling pity. Instead, I felt a cold satisfaction. He had always treated me like I was disposable. Now, he was realizing what a mistake he had made. I'm not coming back, Steve, I said firmly, my voice cutting through the phone. You made your choice when you told me that my personal problems weren't your concern. Now you're seeing the consequences. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then, in a voice that sounded like a man who had lost everything, he muttered, Please, I'll make it right. I'll pay you whatever you want. Just come back. That was the last straw, the offer, the pleading. It all sounded so hollow. He didn't care about making things right. He only cared about saving his business. The damage was done. I didn't need his money. I didn't need his apology. I had a new life now. I had my family. And I wasn't going to sacrifice any more of my time to someone who had never respected me. I'm not interested in your money, Steve, I said coldly. I've moved on. I suggest you do the same. I hung up without waiting for a response. But Steve wasn't done. The following week, I got an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from the Titleline legal team. At first, I thought it was some mistake, some misplaced piece of paperwork. But when I opened it, my heart dropped. It was a cease and desist letter. Apparently, they had decided to go after me for breaching my contract. They claimed that my resignation had violated terms of confidentiality and non-compete agreements. It was the last thing I expected. I couldn't believe it. All I had done was walk away from a toxic environment. But here they were, trying to bully me into silence. For a moment, I panicked. I was confused. What did they mean by non-compete? I had never signed anything that said I couldn't work in the industry again. But there it was, in black and white, threatening legal action if I didn't comply. I immediately called a lawyer. After discussing everything with him, I learned that Steve was grasping at straws. The contract they referred to was outdated and poorly worded, and it wasn't enforceable. In fact, my resignation had been entirely legal. They had no case, but the audacity of it pissed me off. So, I decided to do something I had never done before. I took the fight to Steve. If he thought he could bully me with threats, then he hadn't learned anything from our previous exchanges. I started contacting Titline's clients. Olivia, who had been begging me to come back, had mentioned that several key clients were considering leaving due to the disruption. That's when I realized I could turn the tables. I wasn't about to let Steve just wipe his hands clean and pretend that everything was okay. I reached out to the top clients that I had worked with directly, explaining the situation. I was careful not to burn bridges. Most of them were good people, and I respected them. But I made sure they knew what was going on behind the scenes. I told them about Steve's treatment of employees, his complete lack of empathy, and how it was affecting the work they were paying for. I didn't name names or go into any petty details, but I made it clear that the quality of service was going to suffer as long as Steve was in charge. And it worked. One by one, the clients started pulling their contracts. Some of them came directly to me for advice on where to go next. Others simply walked away without saying a word. Either way, the result was the same. Titleline was losing business fast. Within days, Steve was scrambling, calling me and leaving voicemails pleading for me to come back. But this time, I didn't even bother to pick up the phone, 2 weeks after the cease and desist letter. I got a call from Olivia again. She told me things were going from bad to worse. Steve was trying to find a way out of the mess he had created, but it was clear that his actions had finally caught up with him. Please, I don't know what to do anymore. Can't you just come back for a little while? Help us get through this, she begged. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't even about the job. It was about watching Steve struggle. I had no sympathy left for him. His ego had finally destroyed him. I told you, Olivia, I replied. I'm not coming back. You all had your chance. And with that, I shut the door on that chapter for good. It felt like things were finally falling into place. I had no idea how much longer Titleline could keep their business afloat without me. The clients I had helped bring in, the relationships I had nurtured over the years, they were all gone. But Steve, ever the optimist, kept thinking there was a way to fix things. He didn't realize it was already too late. Weeks passed. Each day felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Sophia was recovering well, and I was able to focus on her, on us, without the constant pressure of work hanging over me. But I still kept an eye on Titleline. I couldn't help myself. I wanted to see how far Steve would go before he finally gave up. It wasn't long before I got another letter. This time, it wasn't from the legal team. It was a letter from Steve himself. I opened it, half expecting another apology, another round of desperate pleas. But what I found was something else entirely. It was a letter of resignation. I've made mistakes, Steve wrote. I've lost good people, and I've destroyed my business. I won't try to fix things with you, or anyone else. But I've realized that I've been running from my own failures for too long. It's time for me to step down. The company is yours, if you want it. My jaw dropped. I read it again. Was this really happening? Had I really driven Steve to the point of quitting everything? I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just sit in stunned silence. But then I realized something. Steve wasn't just stepping down, he was handing over the company. To me, I couldn't believe it. After everything he had put me through, after all the rejection, the disrespect, it was as if the universe was handing me a gift I hadn't even realized I wanted. But now, I knew exactly what I would do with it. I reached out to Olivia and a few other people who had been with the company longer than I had. I knew they were loyal and good at their jobs, even though they had been swept up in Steve's chaotic mess. Together, we took over the company. I had to take charge, fix the mess he left behind, and rebuild everything from the ground up. It wasn't easy, but I had the experience and I knew how to turn things around. We started by rebuilding relationships with the clients. Slowly, they started coming back hesitant, but curious to see how things had changed. I didn't make any grand promises, but I made sure to deliver. I was organized, transparent, and I treated people with respect. Meanwhile, Steve was gone. He disappeared, and I never heard from him again. Part of me wondered what he was doing now. Maybe he'd learned from his mistakes. Maybe he'd finally understand what it was like to be on the other side of the table, where you had to rely on others and treat them well. But honestly, I didn't care. The best part? I had turned Titleline into something better, something more ethical, more grounded. And the clients noticed. Business started to pick up. I was in charge now, and the difference in how the company ran was like night and day. No more screaming matches, no more playing games. People respected me, and they could tell that I valued my team and my clients. Slowly but surely, the company began thriving again. In the end, I not only got the revenge I was looking for, but I also got something even more satisfying. Control. I wasn't just another employee anymore. I wasn't just someone Steve could push around. I had built something better with my own hands, and no one could take that from me. Every time I walked into the office, I thought about Steve, and I couldn't help but smile. He had underestimated me. He had thought that I was just another cog in his machine. But I wasn't. I was the one who kept everything running, and now I was the one in charge. No more begging. No more being pushed around. I had one. And Steve? Well, he learned the hard way that if you burn bridges, you don't just lose your employees. You lose everything.